Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
I don't know a lot of you, I'm afraid. I don't remember. I haven't been here in a while, so I don't know. I see a lot of faces I don't know. Then a lot of faces I do know. Every time I come to GBF Sunday Sitting, I'm amazed, actually, that we exist at all. That this group gets together and is able to practice together freely and openly. People always use the word miraculous. But I think this is quite miraculous that gay men can practice together openly and look at what makes the Dharma pertinent for our lives. So I'm really happy to be here again and to be able to share my little understanding today. The last time I spoke here, it was a couple of months ago, and it was sort of something I just sort of said, well, I'll talk. Somebody else was supposed to be speaking. I can't remember who it was. Oh, it was Petra McWilliams, and she couldn't show up. She was sick, so I spoke. And after my talk, Joachim Posse, do you know him, JP? He came up and said, I really liked your talk, but you're not very funny. You need to like throw in some jokes or something. He was kind of critiquing my style. So I was thinking to myself, well, what joke could I tell? I mean, the best jokes that I know are about my teachers, But then I thought to myself, well, that's sort of a phony thing, I should come up with a joke. It's sort of like, well, one day the Buddha walked into a bar, and it's not, so it's not really. Here he is now. We're just talking about you. But it was okay what we said. Anyway, but I'm not going to repeat it. So you can just worry the whole time about it. So you're welcome. So anyway, I'm not going to tell a joke other than that. I haven't been involved in GBF as much as I'd like to be, except in the last couple of months. And the reason why that is for the last 1.5 to 2 years I've been sick. My body's starting to fall apart, which is what happens, as we age. Not that it's just age, it's just my body's having some problems. And so I was on some medication that was really doing terrible things to me. So I wasn't able to put much energy into GBF because I didn't have any energy even to live day to day. It was very difficult. So I'm really glad to be able to be back more and to involve myself more and to be together with you. And also to maybe do some more practice opportunities, which we haven't done much in the last year or two. So maybe more sitting meditations once a month or for longer periods might be helpful, mornings or whole days. Anyway, in my tradition, which is Soto Zen, the tradition the lineage that I stand in, Dharma talks are not so much about imparting information as they are about creating an environment of the Dharma, an environment of practice, an environment of paying attention to what's going on at this very moment where we are today in San Francisco, GBF, as being individuals we are, October 25th, 1998. Not so much about some complicated Buddhist ideas or theories. And so hopefully I can do that today, or together we can do that, create an environment where we can hear the Dharma taste the Dharma, feel the Dharma, rather than just get the words and sort of try to figure out what it means. So that's what in my tradition we try to do. So my talk this morning is going to be about loving kindness practice, and I'm going to be talking about sort of like two parts of it. It'll be in two sections. One just about obstacles to practice, which we've all experienced, but I think it's useful to talk about in a more kind of real practical kind of way. And secondly, and actually a guided metta practice or guided loving kindness practice, which we don't do too much in GBF, which is a vipassana practice actually. Vipassana meaning insight, style of or kind of guided meditation. So the guided, it's a little strange for me to do too, being a Soto Zen practitioner. But I feel this cross-fertilization that's going on in all the traditions is really useful, and I particularly feel this practice is a really wonderful practice, and I've used it often, and I've done it once or twice for GBF, but I think maybe once. It was at a retreat some time ago, and, but I hopefully you'll find it useful for your practice. So I want to say something that I feel will be useful for you. I'm not sure there'll be a whole lot of time for questions, but if you'd like to talk after, you're more than welcome to come up, and if it's something that you find useful in your life, maybe we can do something more formal around it in the future for GBF in terms of guided meditations, which we haven't, like I said, we haven't done much. So as far as the obstacles to loving kindness go, there's so many. I mean, sure, there's as many as there are delusions, but 108 to be precise. But there's about 6 or 7 that I want to talk about that have affected my life and the lives of the people that I know I've practiced with over the years, my teachers, and so they're like important ones, I think, just to be aware of and to become familiar with in our own lives. And the familiarity again is part of what Buddhist practice is about, becoming familiar with what we perceive as negative in our lives and having the same kind of feeling about what we perceive as negative as what we perceive as positive. So one I want to talk about initially is being taken advantage of, being used, and a fear of looking foolish, which I think is a really common obstacle that we all have. And that could be in the context of friendship or in the context of a relationship, more intimate relationship. There's that great line, your perfect lover looks just like a perfect fool, which I always really love that line. That's a Bob Dylan line, I think. So when we're used, we feel like we're being used in one way or another, either intellectually or physically or however. We have this, like, there's a kind of a stop and a defense that comes up immediately. So it's a very ticklish, difficult area. Another area is envy, which I think is really, really common. I mean, we all know it, kind of have some sense of what that is. Maybe we want what other people have. And that means just not things necessarily, maybe apartments or cars or that kind of stuff, physical stuff, but also might mean other people's looks, for instance, which is, I think, obviously a common one in the gay culture, that we want to look a certain way, or we want to look like somebody, or we have this ideal about what beauty is, or whatever, or we have, whatever, however that manifests itself, which can be many, many ways, and it gets pretty subtle, I think. Those things kind of come up at the times when you least expect. You go, oh, I wish I was like that. I wish I were 20. Well, not really, but say, I wish I were something else. I wish I came from another culture, or I wish I don't like, my background, or all that stuff. All that's about envy, I think. And once again, I'm not talking about it being terrible that we have these feelings, but they're just there, and to notice them and to become familiar with them so that when they arise, we don't get so knocked around by them. Also, it can come down to, envy of things like A better job, I think, is always a good one. I'm on the way to get a better job because it'll make me a better person. I'll have more money. I'll be able to do what I want, and all the stuff that goes on in that. I think we do that constantly. Another one is not feeling worthy of love. I think it's really common too, or not worthy to give or to get. And I just don't mean, romantic love. I also just mean just kindness. That we have a tendency to that kindness isn't due us, and that we don't need to be kind to one another. It's not considered a value too much in the culture. It's sort of, this culture sort of mixed messages. In one way, yes, we need to be kind because it keeps the society together, but there's kind of no way you can do that given the structure of the society. A lot of times it's hard to be kind to people when you're in Muni and you're being squished by all these people. Just to be aware and to be kind to one another, you just want to survive and get through it and get home, sometimes. In our actual situation, or we're exhausted at work, or we're working very hard and we're not appreciated. Another very common obstacle, I think, is the fear of intimacy, which we've talked about. It's a classic fear of being hurt, being harmed. This is the one we could talk about. I think we've had workshops on this, and we talk about it all the time. And it's something we constantly, I think, need to work with, because people who even have very good self-images eventually find that fearful in their lives because they've been harmed in some way by people, either in a relationship or a friendship or with family or however. So that, especially after you've had a relationship, I think, that hasn't gone too well, people go, never again, or something like that. That kind of energy. I'm not going to get hurt like that again. That's not going to ever happen to me. But probably it will if you open your heart again. The truth of the matter. The Dharma says, our hearts get broken over and over again. That's the position of the Dharma. Kind of scary, but that really is how it exhibits itself in real life. My teachers were constantly harmed by their students in many really strange ways, and they always took it all with equanimity. They just, they always said, he's having a hard time, or whatever. They would never lash out or try to get back at them or something like that. Another, I think, common obstacle is revenge. Because of that, being harmed in some way, our tendency is to kind of lash out really quickly and fast and furiously. I think that's not an unusual thing that human beings have in us, and I think part of it has to do with our physiology, and I think part of it has to do with our emotional states, but we do have that in us. And making friends with revenge is not such an easy thing, because we want to think of it as being, in fact, we want to think of all these obstacles as being sort of evil or terrible and not very Buddhist. But actually, they're just our natural responses to things sometimes, and so we have to feel familiar with them in that way, so we don't create this huge dichotomy and this huge duality, which we do often in our lives. Another one is, I think, and I think we understand this one very well from GBF, is criticizing others is a really difficult one. Maybe that's part of it that's due to the history of gay men having, and not just gay men, but I think women too, or people being oppressed, having this style, which we call dishing or whatever, that you kind of lay people out or something, or do numbers on them, and it's sort of clever and witty and that sort of thing. So it's a very difficult one, I think, for gay men. Because you just kind of want to come back with a retort sometimes. Cause it's like people sort of set themselves up, and you say, "Oh," and just whack. And that's, I've experienced that a lot at GBF. That issue coming up, it's very easy to say, "Oh, he's a pain" or something, or he's got this issue, or whatever we want to say about that person. And so I think that's one we have to be really careful about. And we shouldn't be so ready to jump on people because they're not what we expect them to be. Like, they're not very good Buddhists. That's a very common one. They're a lousy Buddhist. So we should teach them. You are a bad Buddhist, and you're gonna go straight to Dharma hell. It just sounds Christian to me, but that's okay. So I happened to have firsthand experience with this about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm sort of just myself, and I have a big mouth sometimes, which is one of the things I try to work on. But anyway, so I said something about something, and somebody came to me, and I was on the steering committee at the time, and said, "You are a terrible monk." And I went, it's like, you rotten person. You're. It's worse if you're a monk, you're ordained, then you're really going to go to Dharma hell because you say these terrible things about people. I don't even remember what I said. I thought it was pretty light. I think it was about drugs. Some guy that we were all sitting around at one of the retreats and we were talking about drugs, and this guy said, "Oh yeah, I used to love to shoot speed," and going on about his life. And so after I said, "Oh, that poor guy, he's really into speed," and that's what the guy took. And I thought it was just sort of general conversation. I didn't think, "Oh, I shouldn't be saying that," because this guy just took me. He said, "You and blah, blah, and how could you? You're an example, and what are you doing? And you're wrecking the Sangha." And so I've had that both ways. I just sort of sat there and saying, getting littler and littler. It's like, so that one I think is important for us to think about all the time. So we'll be careful when we criticize one another. Try to be, because find out where it's coming from. It's really coming from my own fear and my own ideas about what Buddhism is. And it's this monolithic structure that I have to preserve. I have to preserve Buddhism. Buddhism will do fine without you, so don't worry about it. Somebody said that one of my Dharma sisters was talking about Buddhism with a friend of hers, and her friend said, she's a monk, a lesbian monk, and a friend of hers said, "Well, shouldn't you be careful? You might pollute Buddhism, And she goes, "I can't pollute Buddhism." That's incredibly egotistical to think that this one little person can do anything. I can't even control my heartbeat, or my breath. So how am I going to pollute Buddhism? The last obstacle, I'm sure there are many more obstacles, as I said. The last one is childhood imprinting. I like that word now. It's sort of, it's sort of computer-ease or something, And it's also a way of not having to deal with stuff, sort of, too. It's kind of weird. You can say, well, I was imprinted, so I'm not responsible for my actions. But it's true as children, maybe we didn't get the kind of attention we needed, or we didn't get maybe the kind of love we needed. And so that causes some deep wounds in us, or some pain in our hearts. And but actually, in terms of the Dharma, it's just something to work with. It doesn't feel that way when you're experiencing it, but that's really what it is. It's just another way of learning who we really are, and this big monolith of who we think we are is not us at all. So it's just a matter of, once again, of becoming familiar with one's imprinting, childhood imprints, so that we're familiar with those areas. So when they come up, we don't flip out each time. That we experience it in this negative way that prohibits us from being loving and being kind. And a lot of times it is that stuff. And it's one more thing to work with in one's practice and just to be aware of. Once again, I want to say that we shouldn't, these are just some of the general obstacles that I've experienced and that people I know have experienced and people I've talked to and in Dharma life have experienced that are, I think, pretty common. And to be aware of them and to bring them up and to talk about them and to kind of feel them in ourselves as we use the words, I think is helpful. And not to think about them as bad or not good in some way, but simply what's arising in us. My first teacher, my root teacher, Shogaku Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, said that, it's in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, that these we consider weeds to our practice, and weeds are very useful, so we can just dig them up and put them back into the soil. So they're actually the way of us, a wonderful way of us understanding our lives and understanding who we really are, so we can let that go. Because we can't let it go until we know what it is. We can't let it go until we can name it, acknowledge it, get into it, understand it, feel it, and then let it go. So, the founder of my lineage, of my particular tradition, Zen tradition, is not really the founder of the lineage, but the founder of the tradition, Dogen Zenji, a Japanese teacher in 1200s, said Buddhism is about studying the self. So this is a perfect example of that. What we've done so far this morning, just analyzing and looking at and being aware of the obstacles to loving kindness. So then once again we need to have some compassion toward these things we perceive as negative in our lives and actually welcome them in so that they become, that we don't get rid of them in some way, that they're gone, that they've left somehow, but that they're part of us and they can help us also understand that the same thing in other people. So that it's not so foreign to us when people are very envious or when people are snotty to us or something. We can understand that very easily because we've experienced it already, explored it in our own selves. I always say, I use the same language over and over again. I say make friends with them, it's really making friends with what we perceive as negative. Because that's all it is perception, So with that background, see how I'd like to, we'll have enough time to do a guided metta practice, a guided meditation. Let's see. I'd like you to sort of get comfortable. And if you want to lie down, go ahead, or if you want to, whatever you want to do. Just if you're cross-legged is good, that's fine. And you should be closing your eyes as part of this. So. So first we're going to do some relaxation techniques before we begin the meditation, just sort of to stop and not have that ear open to hear every word. Just relax. I want you to begin breathing first. And when you breathe, take in deep breaths. I want you to take in 3 or 4 breaths, but I want you to breathe from your hara again, which hara is this part between your groin and your navel, and your belly button. That's where I want you to breathe from, rather than from the top here. So you extend your stomach out when you breathe from that place. So I want you to do a couple of deep breaths. So. And you can close your eyes if you like. I want to realize that the breath is our connection to life. And I want you to raise and lower your shoulders like this up to your, just do that a couple of times. Once, another time, up to your shoulders, down, one more, and let's do one more, 4. Okay, I'm going to breathe again. Now I'd like you to take your hands and tighten them into a fist and hold that for a minute or two. So tighten your hands into a fist, tight, as tight as you can do it. And now release. Just release, okay? And let's do that again. Tighten your hands to a fist, tight, as tight as you can. Release. And again, tighten your fists as tight as you can do them. Tight. And release. Okay. Breathe again from the hara. Now I want you to tighten your feet, your toes in the same way. I want you to pull them in if you can. I know it's more difficult to do than up, but if you can pull them in like a fist, it's better. So tighten your feet, tight as you can. It might hurt a little. Okay, let that go then. Okay, just relax them. Okay. One more time. Tighten your feet as tight as you can. Tight. And let them go. Okay. And one more time. Tighten your feet. Tight. And let them go. Okay. So breathe again. Now the last part of this exercise is just to shake out your hands. Just a little bit. Just to loosen it up. Let it go. Okay. That's good. Now if your eyes are not closed, I'd like you to close them. Let's be quiet for a few minutes. Let go of the talk and discussion of the last half hour or so. Just sit in the silence that can open us to the heart of loving kindness. Breathe naturally and fully. Relax into your quiet breath. Enjoy your breath. Please say the following words to yourself. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. As you say these words, picture yourself as a child when your life was more simple, when you didn't question the natural flow of things. Picture this little child immersed in loving kindness. Think of yourself as you are now, as an adult, and extend loving kindness to yourself at this very moment. Also, picture those parts of yourself that you have difficulty loving. Extend this heart of kindness to your body as it is, to your mind, your emotions and thoughts, to any confusion or pain that may come and go, to your whole being. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. Now extend these feelings of loving kindness to those you feel most close to a loved one or maybe a special friend, a family member, a partner, maybe someone you've just met or someone you've known for a long time. It might be a person in GBF, maybe someone in this room. Open your heart to this person. May he or she be filled with loving kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful and at ease. May they be happy. Now include someone that you find extremely attractive in the circle of loving kindness. A person who you'd like to be close to but are not able to be. Someone you might want to be intimate with but cannot for whatever reason. Maybe it's someone you find sexually attractive, or an individual who you feel is extremely good-looking or attractive in some way, or whose body is desirable to you, or even maybe a fantasy lover. Open your heart of compassion to this being. May he be filled with loving kindness. May he be well. May he be peaceful and at ease. May he be happy. Now expand this open-hearted intention to people you deal with in your daily life, to co-workers, to neighbors, to people who you encounter at the grocery store, local shops, to acquaintances, to people you see every day on buses or in the streets. May they be filled with loving kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful and at ease. May they be happy. Now extend the feelings of loving kindness to those who you find it difficult to deal with. Maybe someone you work with who irritates you, or perhaps someone who has hurt you, a former friend or partner, or a person you've had a recent quarrel with, someone you dislike for whatever reason, who you'd like to avoid. Bring a feeling of open-hearted acceptance to this individual. Picture yourself in this person's place as someone who desires happiness and peace as you do. May they be filled with loving kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful and at ease. May they be happy. Now gradually allow your sense of loving kindness to spread out to the wider world, to the people in San Francisco or to your town or city, to the people here in California, to those who live in the United States, to all people in our hemisphere, and lastly, to all humans who inhabit our planet. And then spread this kindness to all beings, to animals and to all living creatures, to this beautiful earth, to the forests, deserts, and oceans. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be well. May all beings be peaceful and at ease. May all beings be happy. The loving kindness we give to ourselves and to all those around us is the acknowledgement of the realization of our deep interdependence. We sense this great truth, that we have connections with each other that are more important than life and death, and compassion and love are the only responses to this truth. Gratitude to all of our teachers, past, present, and future. Gratitude and deep thanks to Buddha, to Dharma, to Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. So I'd like to thank you all this morning for allowing me to be here. And also I want to thank you all, many of you, for some time for supporting my practice and helping me on the path. I appreciate it very much. It's GBF has been an extremely important part of my my practice now, and I made a vow to my teacher that I'd try to practice in the gay and lesbian community, and you have all made that possible for me, so I thank you very much. So it's about that time.
Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you.
It's always nice to be interdependent with you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.